My name is Lehlohonolo Maja from Nisa Global Entertainment. This is just beyond amazing. The picture of a mother blew my mind away. I can't get over it. I also want my kids to do that for me. Picture that beautiful. You're amazing, Amita.
This was the second last portrait from the series, and the Pata was the last. And then I also wrote to Jürgen Schadeberg and asked him for permission to do that work, to use the silhouette.
And this you did how long ago?
I worked on it a few years ago, 2011, and then I reworked it last year, adding all the beads and sequins, and then putting down the Swarovskis into a body. So I said that she basically turns into this constellation suspended in time, and she was a star, So a play on that notion as well.
Beautiful.
Nowhere can the story of South Africa's turbulent past and its extraordinary transition to democracy be told as it is told here at Constitution Hill. This national heritage site has witnessed a century of South Africa's history, from British soldiers who fought with the Boers at the turn of the century, to the youth caught up in the Soweto uprising, to the dawn of democracy and the building of South Africa's Constitutional Court. And as you know, the Constitutional Court is the guardian of human rights here at Constitution Hill, and it's also the highest court in the land. Constitution Hill has certainly witnessed it all. Now, as you take the journey through the site and you go down to the number 4 isolation cells, you'll witness the dark heart of Constitution Hill. And that will really deepen your understanding of what it meant to be placed at the bottom of the racial hierarchy, and how the apartheid system made criminals of black men. Prisoners such as Mahatma Gandhi, Robert Sobukwe, even Nelson Mandela, and the students of the 1976 uprising know this prison all too well. So there was certainly no distinction between who was a criminal and also between criminals and those who fought for the liberation of South Africa. They were all just classed together as criminals. And then you make your way to the Old Fort, where we are positioned at the moment, which was built in 1893, which is one of Johannesburg's oldest buildings, and was used as a fortress by Paul Kruger during the Anglo-Boer War. You become accustomed to this haunting space, which was used for a prison to incarcerate white male prisoners. But with the exception of Nelson Mandela, who was the only black male prisoner who was held where the white male prisoners were held, and that was apparently done as a way to keep him from influencing the other black prisoners politically. And we also have the women's section, the women's jail. The grace of this Victorian-style building belies the pain and suffering that occurred within those prison walls. It's the place where the likes of Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Albertina Sisulu, Fatima Meer, and many other political activists were held. And I think the significance of having this exhibition here really ties in with some of the stories and the lives of the women that were imprisoned at the women's jail. So I like to make similarities, because today Amita Makan stands here. She's a woman, she's a creative soul, she's an artist, and she has that freedom of expression, the freedom to tell her stories without having the fear of being imprisoned and oppressed and without the fear of her voice being taken away. I like to make similarities between that sense of freedom and the lack of freedom that took place here some years ago at the women's jail, where voices were silenced and these women that were held here just did not have that platform to express themselves freely. So it's quite significant that she's now here expressing herself openly and freely and creatively. And I think, you know, the space that she's in now is reminiscent of the space that used to be here, where women were oppressed and they just couldn't come out. We also have the Constitutional Court, as I mentioned earlier, that it's the guardian of basic human rights and freedom that so many imprisoned here had fought for and won. And it also houses a collection of artworks by eminent South African artists. A tour through the court would give you, as a visitor, a chance to experience a real court case from the visitor decks. And in addition to the guided tours, Constitution Hill also offers a range of other public and educational programs, because it is our mandate to reach out to the communities around us, to pull them in and really create an educational space where people, the wider public, can learn about some of the objectives of Constitution Hill, which is democracy, human rights, constitutionalism, and also expose them to the site of oppression as a beacon of hope, a beacon of a better tomorrow. So I think this site speaks volumes, and I don't want to say too much about the site because I want you to come back for a tour and also to view some of the gripping exhibitions that are hosted here. Brenton Maart is the current director of the AVA in Cape Town and the curator of the South African Pavilion. He was the curator of the South African Pavilion at the 2013 edition of the Venice Biennale. And previously, he was also the director of the KZN SA Gallery in Durban. And he was also the curator of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature Art Collection. And he also took on the role of being a consultant at the Freedom Park Trust and also the curator at Johannesburg Art Gallery. He holds an MA in Fine Arts from Wits University, an MSc, yes, he has had his fingers in every cake, an MSc in Biotechnology from Rhodes University, and currently, currently PhD scholar, am I correct? He is currently a PhD scholar at the Micheli School of Fine Arts at the University of Cape Town. And as you already may know by now that he is the curator of this amazing exhibition by Amita Makan, Nomalungelo, Threats to Freedom. So I would like to call on Brenton Maart, and yeah, I think he'll steal this.
Okay, thanks, Hassan. I'm going to apologize if these talks go on for a while, but you're a captive audience. We fed you wine and you're forced to stay. So thank you so much for your full attention. I'm going to start off by just, before I ask Amita to come up and talk a little bit about herself and her work and thank everyone involved in this exhibition, I just want to give you a little bit of a history of Amita and myself. We go way back. We've known each other for 40 years or so. We were at primary school together, in fact, at this little school in Port Elizabeth called Galvin Park. And I remember Amita as a little knobbly-kneed girl wearing our school uniform, wearing yellow and brown, it was, at Galvin Park. So we ran around like little bees, Amita and myself, being kind of out of sorts, often not fitting in often feeling that our creative drive has taken us out of what essentially was quite an academic, quite a scientific, quite a kind of forceful technological academic background. And I've seen Amita since then, since that 40 years ago, on and off for about 40 years. We crossed paths at Rhodes University, where Amita finished an MA in International Relations. I think she dabbled in science as well before that, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a kind of combination of science, of the kind of technique, the meticulousness, the astute focus on fine details, coupled with an innate affection for people, an innate kind of understanding of how human beings interact with each other. And those are the two key elements that I feel come across really strongly in this body of work that Amita presents here at Constitution Hill. I went around and saw the body of work that she had at a studio at home in Pretoria. And this is the first viewing of a body of work that I'd been developing since that show in Durban, which was, 5 years ago. And at that show, the starting point, the focal point, the central work of that show was the portrait of Amita's mother, which is suspended over there, called Loose Threads. It's a meticulously woven, embroidered portrait. And since then, the kind of initial work, the initial amount of labor of love, labor of memory that is vested within that portrait, has since developed, since 5 years ago, into a more recent body of work which shows a greater exuberance, and Rob mentioned this earlier as well, a greater freedom, a greater kind of feel for the material, a greater understanding of the ability to take what is quite a solid memory and then break that up into various components, and in doing that, to be able to reconstruct what is quite a kind of firm memory, break it up and then reconfigure it into a new body of work. I'm going to ask Amita to say a few words later, but I just want to show you what she's been up to. Amita is a relatively new artist. I'd imagine I could say that her professional career started about 7 years ago or so. And since then, she's had a number of solo exhibitions, locally and internationally. And her work is held in a number of esteemed institutional collections, including the University of KwaZulu-Natal, the University of South Africa, the University of Pretoria, the Eduardo Villa Museum, the South African Reserve Bank, and the Char Mahala Palace Art Collection in India. Amita lives and works in Pretoria, and her forthcoming exhibitions include being a participant in a group show at the Nyrox Projects space in Johannesburg, and also at the Luciano Benetton Foundation for the 2015 edition of the International Biennale de Venezia. So I'd like you all to just join me in congratulating Amita with the round of applause. In South Africa, during the turbulent 20th century, visual art focused on political resistance and became a vehicle for insurgency against human rights abuses. After the advent of democracy, it shifted towards an exploration of issues of identity, with race and gender gaining prominence. Today, contemporary South Africa is witness to a further significant movement, a renewed and invigorating focus on how and why histories continue to impact on the world today. To do this, as Amita does, contemporary artists are turning to the archive as a repository of these histories, to allow them in very different and vibrant ways to draw on the archived record in order to make sense of our world today. So what is it about the record that artists find so enticing? At its most simplest level, it's that rare combination of memory with thing, which is the coming together of the tangible and the intangible, which makes of the record such a powerful force. It allows the artist to construct bridges, to construct an architecture between history and the contemporary, and to create a structure of meaning. So working with archives in creative ways allows the artist to make work with the potential to change the course of our contemporary world. And this is not a light statement. We see over and over again how playing with archives, how fiddling with archives, allowing certain information to become known to the public and certain information to be withheld, whether legislatively, whether constitutionally, or whether through direct action, allows certain images of ruling parties to come to the fore. I mean, we need only think of the altered archives of Mao Zedong and how those archives were used very vehemently in the construction of an ideology based on what sort of information was available to people. To the exhibition, about the exhibition Nomalungelo, Threads to Freedom. At its simplest level, it's a series of 8 embroidered portraits, book-ended chronologically by loose ends, which is a portrait of the artist's mother constructed in 2009, and the portrait of Brenda Fassie, constructed in 2014, titled My Black President. Between these two are a series of portraits of Miriam Makeba and Dorothy Masuku, 2 further goddesses of South African music, along with self-portraits of the artists. These are the 2 self-portraits of the artist. What holds together the seemingly disparate collection is the following. The subjects are all women. They are all brought to life using the threads and the swatches of saris that belong to the artist's mother. All the women on show are essentially all divas, and knowing Amita, she's a total diva, and she fits in very well with the likes of Brenda Fassie et al. So they're all divas, and they're all worthy objects of worship. Amita asked me to say that. No, she didn't. I just made that up. And they are all in various sectors, whether public or private, whether social or domestic, or local or international, vocal and pioneering advocates of the right to freedom. Archival photographs are the starting point for the artwork. Amita's mother in an unnamed studio, Sally Shawkin's image of Brenda Fassie, Gopal Naransamy and Jürgen Schadebert's images of Makeba, snapshots of the artists. Photographs like these are able to capture, to hold, and to demonstrate an ideology of its time. They are graphs, they are visual representations of the interactions of societies and social forces with landscape and spatial agency. These stationary objects become indicators of change. Are you bored yet? No. Shall I carry on? I'm nearly done. Nomalungelo brings to the fore multiple layers of value. The archives, including as they do precious material, are of course economically viable. They are also important in terms of history and heritage. Their significance is intellectual in critical scholarship. Their role as contemporary cultural products leads to an appreciation, as we see around us, that many find invaluable. Due to their temporal scope, they are essential as markers of highly specific shifts, and they allow patterns to develop. It then becomes Makan's role to utilize the scientific trope, this trope of selecting, of categorizing and presenting information as the building blocks for creative practice. So she mediates between the didactic analytical trope on the one hand and the poetic aesthetic on the other. In effect, the individual items, the photographs and the fabric samples, become micro-historical quotations that collectively work to paint the bigger picture. Ordinary items, photographs, fabrics, here become archaeological items, sequentially transformed first into simple narrative aids and then into complex signs. And in conclusion, this is just one of many opinions. This is just my opinion, and you may experience the work differently. This draws attention to the subjectivity of each person's interpretation. This is just my interpretation, one interpretation, greedy in its haste to assign meaning. For writer James Elkins, it is an example of the avaricious snap of rhetoric, which is an exercise that requires increasingly tricky thinking. In this quagmire of meaning, this murky terrain of interpretive authority, it is wise and infinitely more generous to get back to the thrill made visible, back to where we started, back to the artist's delight in making her art. Thank you.